We begin with the investigative probe panel on alleged corruption and abuse of power, torture, cruel, inhumane and degrading treatment in the Nigerian correctional facilities. Now, earlier in the week, the probe panel began the third phase of its public hearing in Abuja, with focus centered on children and young persons in custody. Now, the conditions of juveniles in correctional facilities, compliance with child protection laws, minor in custody struggling with addiction. These are some of the issues they have been looking into. Now, the panel was constituted by the Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, in September of 2024, following allegations of corruption and gross misconduct involving the NCOS officials and cross-dresser Idris Okuneye, popularly known as Bobrisky. Now, the panel held the first two phases of its hearing in September 2024 and March 2025. Now, as part of its mandate, the panel in November 2024 undertook field visits to different correctional centers across the country to ascertain their state. Now, the investigative hearing comes in the wake of another prison break in Nasarawa State with 16 inmates on the loose. It also calls to mind the state of Nigeria's correctional centers as well as the administration of criminal justice system in the country. Now, to help us shed light on this, we have joining us in the studio the Executive Director, Prisoners Rehabilitation and Welfare Action, PRAWA, in the person of Dr. Uju Agomoh. She's the Secretary of the Independent Investigative Panel on alleged corruption and other violations against the Nigerian Correctional Service. Now, welcome to the program. Good to have you.
Thank you very much.
We had you on a different platform on this channel a couple of weeks or days ago?
Yeah.
Days, actually. Well, it's good to have you here. Apparently, this is a very serious issue, but it'll be nice to, get from your view the state of Nigeria's correctional facilities. I almost said prisons. Because I wonder if you can really refer to them as correctional, centers. But what is the, overall state before we, come down to the different issues?
Thank you very much. I think the overall state is that we do have facilities that the Nigerian Correctional Service is in charge of. And these facilities includes the custodial centers or the correctional centers, they mean the same. It also includes things like Bostel institutions where young offenders are kept. It also includes farm centers. It also includes training institutions of the Nigerian Correctional Service, in addition to their headquarter structure, which is both at the state, at the zone, and at the national level. But importantly, the service do also have issues that they confront with one of the major ones, which a lot of people know about, is the issue of congestion, what we normally call overcrowding. But often of that is mainly in the urban areas. So the bulk of custodial centers in cosmopolitan area is quite overcrowded, and just about 30 custodial centers out of the 254 of them have that number. So it generally, when you look at the average, you can still case 69%, 70% of those who are in these custodial centers are people who haven't been convicted. There are persons who are, usually they call them awaiting trial, but yes, some of them, their trials are also ongoing. Some are stored cases, but that average doesn't give you the full picture.
Right.
The full picture is that there are some custodial centers that population is as bad as 90% of those in those facilities that have not been convicted. And it's nightmare to manage a facility with a high number of persons who have not been convicted. Every time you have facilities that you have challenges like jailbreak or attack, usually first thing you should do, go and look at the issue around the proportion that are not being convicted. It's a big problem to manage those who you haven't convicted. So that's the point. But there's also burden on the infrastructure. There are issues about medical. There are issues about challenges in terms of all of the facilities they are supposed to do. The same thing when you call the Nigerian Correctional Service. Remember, it's about custodial service and the non-custodial service. There is also challenge in terms of not giving them enough resources to implement what these are supposed to implement. So if you ask what is the state is as such as you would have seen the law, because in 2019 there was a big transformation. Unfortunately, that big transformation came in the wake of having the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019, but it has not been backed with adequate resources to implement.
So that big transformation you talk about is only on paper.
Your guess is
not indeed.
And it's really bad because one would think that having that, landmark transformation, you would then begin to systematically begin to address those issues. And every issue you see the panel deal with, every issue that has been a concern to Nigeria, everything that has not been working well, the Nigerian Correctional Service Act have made legal provisions for them. So what we need to do is to make sure there is funding to match that. And during the time that the bill was being considered, there was also a financial implication document that the National Assembly requested for. So there was something that's supposed to have been a guide, but I don't know what happened to it.
But is it just a funding issue? Is that where the major issue is? Or the political will to actually implement some of the things that you talk about in this 2019 Act?
Okay.
But let's, you address that. But there are allegations of corruption, abuse of power, torture, and other inhumane treatment by the NCOS that you discovered in the course of, your investigations so far. Let's begin to unpack, some of these and what's giving rise to these, challenges.
I like the last part of your comment.
Right.
Because truly, which is part of the mandate that the Honorable Minister of Interior gave to the panel, is that he wants us to understand what are the things that are actually making it easier for these violations, for these non-compliance. And this is important. But before I go into it, I just want to say, there is nothing as good as having an agency put a searchlight on itself. You see, and I think the major thing that we are seeing here is that this step that the Honorable Minister had taken, Minister of Interior, to say, let's check what is happening. Let's have a mechanism that is outside. You go check what you are doing and find out what is not happening well, which should be what every ministry is supposed to be doing. And I think the major thing is that not to do it ad hocly, but we need to find a system that continues to happen. But I'll come back to address this. So I think the first thing is to commend this process and to ask other ministries to follow likewise. So
use it as a template.
Yes, this is really good, because if you don't search, somebody was making a comment and said, you'll be surprised when you do the same for other sectors, you'll be amazed what you find.
Discover.
And then you also will not be able to know how to address the problem. Now, let's go into the issue. The very first part, and you're correct, funds is one issue, but that's not the only issue.
Right.
I think that the very first part is about the political will, and that political will which recognizes that I need to be open about understanding the root cause of every problem, and then be able to address these root causes through sustainable solutions, and whatever it will take, then we'll make sure that happens. And when anyone falls out of line, something happens, because it's a certainty that when you violate a particular law or a particular policy, but when there's consequences don't happen, it becomes a problem. So I give you one very important aspect. Let's take the issue regarding the fact that you require enough personnel to deliver service. And if you don't have that enough personnel, it means that the few that you have will be overburdened. Okay? If those few that you have that are overburdened, you do not provide adequate facilities and funding to address their welfare, to ensure that they have adequate training, to ensure also that they have an incentive to comply with whatever set rules you have, it becomes problematic. Now, you need to also ask, what is the kinds of funds that you have? So on the average, what are the basic needs of the persons in custody? Because if you don't provide that adequate funds, what it then means is that some other things will happen that ought not to be happening. So if the agency does not have the resources to do what they need to do, because inmates have to be kept in. So inmates have to go to court. So if that does not happen, then you then projecting yourself in a place where inmates will now have to be funding what they ought not to be funding
in the first place.
It doesn't make sense. So again, you see that it looks as if there are patterns, institutionalized patterns, that makes it more easier for the wrong things to happen.
And these patterns you find across the board?
These patterns
Wherever.
we find to a great extent, yeah. And you as you're seeing those patterns, and part of the thing I also want to make Nigerians know is that correctional service sits as a place where it is like a barometer for all that happens within the criminal justice system. Absolutely. So the rot that happens in the law enforcement agencies, you can tap that. So when you have violations where people are arbitrarily arrested, detained, corruption, in terms of if you don't pay, I'm going to likely put an offense even if you didn't commit that offense. So you find out that in the correctional service, you have people who ought not to be there. And it is not the correctional service that have done it, but because of those who are upskilled, the law enforcement agencies,
the police,
and all the rest of them. Then if the court does the wrong thing, you still see it part in the correctional service. So again, I think that if we are careful enough, we can use the correctional service to not only cure what is wrong with their system, but also to identify what is wrong with the other systems and be able to address it. So it is one thing or the other. And if you look at, for example, this week, what the panel have been doing is that every day there is a specific focus on a thematic issue. And each of those thematic issues, there are issues around them. So if you take the first day, what we looked at was around children, which you mentioned. And you're looking at persons who are in the facilities that are designated for young persons, which the correctional service deal with. I just ran that up.
Let's zero in on that. This idea of putting juveniles, underage children, alongside adults in adult, facilities. What's responsible for this? I mean, and it's shocking too to hear that Nigeria, 36 states, has only 3 remand facilities. Is that so fact?
That is functioning.
That's functional.
Yes, that at this moment. And even those 3, also, they also have issues that they need to be addressed. So, and you need to look at the locations of those 3. So you have Kakuri, you have in Kaduna, which is in the northwest. You have one in Abeokuta, which is in the southwest. You have another one in Ilorin, Kwara State, which is in the north central. You have one in Enugu that is not functioning. Has never functioned. I mean, it has issues around the facilities and there are no kids there. Now, but then you ask yourself, because the Act itself, Section 35, already said that every state, there should be a designated young offenders facilities. Now, in all of the states, there are also mechanisms that the states should have. So many states are supposed to have remand homes. In Lagos, for example, you have close to 3-4, including approved schools.
And they are non-functional?
No, they have some of them functional in Lagos, yes.
Okay.
And then we did recently, our organization work with the Correctional Service, the Bureau of Statistics, and some other agencies, including Ministry of Interior, Federal Ministry of Justice. We did a research to assess all of the facilities in the whole country where young persons are. And there were about 29 states that have some facilities. Now, I'm not talking about the state of that facility. Because some of them, you find out that it is as broken that, including the ones for the state. So, you don't have, at the moment, a connection between the state facilities and the correctional service. So, because that could be a very interesting partnership, given that a provision of the 2019 Act has said, you have to have presence in all the states. So, your guess is as good as mine. What will be happening in the states where there are no busters?
I don't even want to imagine. So the states are to blame for the state of affairs as far as mixing juveniles.
Not only the states. Everybody is
largely,
So the first point is we don't have the facilities for the correctional service.
Now, if we have the facilities, what are expected to be in place, especially in the juvenile holding facilities, for example? What should be on ground for it to meet
it is supposed
global
to be
standards?
more like a rehabilitation and educational center. Even the Act specifies it, that their regime should be treated in such a, so there's been a lot of education, a lot of recreational activities for young offenders. It's there. So it is supposed to be there. So first is to make sure there are those facilities. Second is to ensure that the coordination needs to happen, the adequate facilities are provided, and the professionals are supposed to be able to, the right professionals are supposed to do what they need to do. And there needs to be oversight. The part of the issue is that if you go to the 2019 Act of Nigerian Correctional Service, It does say that when a young person comes that is underage, don't accept the person.
Right.
But
right.
the
I know
police,
the NCOS has actually blamed the police for.
yeah, but
for
they're exaggerating
bringing-
ages. That's what I'm saying.
there
They're
you go.
exaggerating ages, and they tell the young people, if you go and say your real age,
You're in
we will
trouble.
come here and we waste you. So you find a situation where, I mean, that research showed that over the period we looked at, 133,000 children over the period of 5 years.
I was actually going to ask you. So 133,000
Over
underage children.
over a 5-year period have been found in adult facilities in one way or the other. But remember that the issue, I mean, both in the adult facilities and of course in the different remand homes and all that. And we also need to understand there are about 18 institutions in Nigeria that can detain people, including children. And the question here is that
As an alternative facility?
not as an alternative, no.
As a main?
As their process.
Right.
You know, all of the agencies, NDLEA, yeah, all of them, EFCC, all of them. And we don't have a centralized database that tells us who is in this facility. It is only the Nigerian Correctional Service that we even have some semblance of statistics. So there is a lot that we don't know enough. So that's one. But remember, this is about the issue of children. You know, I was trying to explain to you that every day the panel was looking at something. And before I move to the day 2 event, the issue is that there are many facilities that are manned by non-state actors. Not government. Some maybe that they are treating drug. So many different places. I mean, sometimes you find that they cage some children and say they are treating them because of drugs and all of that. So do we know all of the places where young persons are? Who is overseeing those sites that are not managed by government? So
very quickly, what recommendations, as far as juvenile underage children's concerned, what recommendations did your panel come up with?
First, you need to implement what the Act says, that every state must have a young offenders facility. And again, that these facilities must be structured in a form to adequately provide educational and recreational issues. Then in relation to Ilorin Boston Institution, the panel directed that there's proper designation of what type of institution that is, because there was a time that institution was serving as a halfway home. And then if it's as a halfway home, you have adults that are in there. And then if it's as Buster, it is a different type of inmates that are supposed to be there. So with that said, that we need to be clear about the designation and the properly gazetted. Right. And then that classification will determine who goes in there. The place like Abeokuta, the issues about sanitation. The panel directed that needs to be addressed. Now, the panel also directed that there should be a mapping of all of the other facilities provided by the state so that we know which states are, because it's not all states that have young offenders facility, and their status, so that can enable some kind of discussions around the relationship between correctional service and these facilities. More so, as you know, correctional service is now in the concurrent legislative list. So that collaboration is necessary. So, and on the issue of these other facilities where there are nobody's properly oversighting them, they are not government function, we believe we should do a proper map and know where they exist, and there must be some oversight. There must be a government agency whose responsibility, and in this regard,
the non-state actors that you mentioned that man some of these facilities, I mean, who exactly are they? Where did they come from? Are they addicts? Are they certified criminals?
No. This is
I just need to be just to be clear on that.
You can only know when you have a process that registers, that supervise, and then to demand certain things before a place can be approved to keep that particular thing. So at the moment, because we don't have that system, it is having a problem.
So a number of days where you actually looked at different issues. We looked at the child.
Day one was for children. Day two was about women.
Right.
So for day 2, we looked at the issue around women. As you know, women usually has the few population in the custodial center across the world. So the statistics tells us it's about 2.3% of the correctional services office inmates across the country that are women. We have only 3 female as the big, because that's a big facility that is for women. But there are also others. They mentioned to us the issue about Undu Custodial Center, and and all of that. And then of course I think there was also one that was mentioned in Abuchi, I think. And there is one that is in Kefi, but that seemed to be, it's a separate one, but because the person in charge is not woman and no, is that, I think I don't know what I'm missing that bit, but let's take it that regarding the female facility, we do not have adequate facility for women. Section 34 of the Nigerian Correctional Service says that we should have designated facilities for women, one per each state. And the intention is not that you're going to be a big thing, because usually few women, but it's supposed to have things like crutches and all of that. And it also has to make sure that every woman that comes in there has opportunity of a pregnancy test within the first 1 week and all of that. So the panel, I did ask the Nigerian Correctional Service to give it information regarding the implementation of this issue first around the designated facilities where women are.
For women.
Because we know that they're not enough. Then the mixed facilities, we wanted to know the status, because a lot of these women don't have adequate workshops to deal with them. And we feel that the model in Kri female should actually be replicated, because really...
You know, it brings me to asking this question, and there's still so many issues here to trash, including, of course, psychological or psychosocial help that, you know, not just the inmates are provided, but even the children who have to, you know, experience a whole lot of things. But I'm wondering, how correctional really are our facilities, these correctional centers? I mean, we designate them, you know, correctional.
Okay, but first, let me just say this. Yes. You know, they're intended to be so. And day 3 was about rehabilitation. And let me just give an example of the intendment of the correctional service to be truly correctional. First, when the name was being decided to be changed
from
in the bill, when it was still a bill, the National Assembly clearly stated that they didn't want this to be like just a name change by mouth. You know, they wanted to make sure that there are provisions in the Act that truly will be correctional. And I give you some examples.
Right.
One, within the Act, for the very first time, there was a provision made that says that whenever you have a profit from enterprises, and when you mean enterprises in correctional centers, because they used to have industries, they have farm centers. He says that those profits should be divided into 3. One third should be for the inmate, towards the inmate's rehabilitation and reintegration. That's the inmate that is part of the workshops and vocational. Then the second is supposed to be for that enterprise, so that they will be able to
earn a living.
Like a revolving fund. So that the business or the enterprise
to sustain the enterprise.
And then the third, to be sent to the government. Before 2019, every profit that is made is sent back to the government.
100%.
100%. And what happens is that when you now, it's not a good business management skill, which was why this provision was made. Now, we also, and I must mention to you that, you know, because of the change in terms of the concurrent legislative placement of correctional service, some states now have their state correctional service law, like Abia State. For the Abia State Correctional Service Law, God bless the governor of Abia State, because he just signed this about, I think, last week and a half. The profit is supposed to be divided into 5, not just the 3 that is in the Correctional Service Act of 2019. He added 2 more. That 2 more includes money, a proportion for the officer who is working hours or whoever is assisting in that business. I mean, you don't take banana and give monkey and you say it shouldn't take it. Because if you don't give incentive to the people managing it,
then they'll find other ways.
And then the last part of that profit is supposed to be for the correctional center where this business is going on. You know, I'm talking about what was meant to be correctional. Every custodial center anywhere in the country has some form of workshop, something. But many of these workshops are dated. Equipment, moribund. There are no proper investment, and even the government is not helping. So, for example, you see inmates who can produce very good uniforms. You see them who can produce shoes. Why can the state not give contract to these correctional centers to produce maybe bed sheets for students, uniform for students, and all that? Because even if you say you are dividing this profit, can you divide 0? So there must be money before that division is done. So that is number one thing. So the panel asked the correctional service to give us lists where this has been implemented, and you know, so that we can see to what extent it's been implemented. And if it is not, let them tell the panel what are the challenges and what they need to do.
And truly, if this really works, I mean, like abroad, for example. talk about education in the prisons.
Yes.
If you go to school, if you attend classes, you're paid a certain amount
to
incentivize you.
You know?
And at the end of the
And
day,
that would be an
you get a
incentive.
qualification and you get money when you're
And
being
you would like
released.
to
Yes,
continue to debate.
absolutely.
There's also something I would like to mention here. The second is also there is one provision that talks about giving certificates of good behavior. So we also want to know how many people they've given to that. But it must be commended so that it doesn't look like we are only seeing the bad things.
Right.
The Open University of Nigeria, I think, is partnering with the Correctional Service, and they are doing the educational bit, you know.
Right.
But for some of the students, so I think that should be commended. But we need to ensure more than that is also happening, and that's what you see. That rehabilitation is the intent of correctional service.
Absolutely.
And every person who is in correctional centers today will come out some the less he dies there. So we must invest in that process, even for our own safety.
Very quickly, there's an issue that I would have raised with you when we're talking about juvenile, underage inmates. But let's still talk about it. Lowest age for criminal responsibility in Nigeria is actually 7 years. I was shocked to, come across that. Maybe you want to speak to that. But prison break is on the rise in Nigeria. We had Nasarawa, Kefi Nasarawa just a couple of weeks ago. Kogi, in different parts of the country, we've had prison breaks. What do you think is responsible? You did mention overcrowding, but is it not more than that?
Let me tell you the problem. And I think it is important for us to see, because if we don't do it, it will continue. And prison break has been there over the years. Section 28, subsection 1, subsection 2, subsection 3 of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act foresaw this. And that section talks about security. It tells you specifically what are the things that needs to happen for every correctional center to secure it.
Right.
Okay? I give you some of the examples. All of them to issue about double parameter walls, which means double parameter walls means by the time you break one, the alert will come before you get to the other one. CCTV cameras, body scanners, all of that. And even the subsection 3 says prioritize the maximum security facilities. The truth of this is that you need to have proper designation of the correctional centers in terms of the risk level. And every major country does it. In the UK, it's the same thing. And once you do that, the next thing you do is that you now do your risk and needs assessment so that inmates are moved according to the categorization of their risk along with the type of the custodial center. 3, the activity, what is normally called regime within that is how they are treated within there, should be aligned with the level of the security that that person has. So until we implement section 28, there will be more more attacks.
More breaks.
Yeah, even the issue about even the same act talks about motorized vehicle. And what is motorized vehicle? When you are transporting an inmate to court, it's not just one vehicle. Here they are struggling about fuel. They are struggling about vehicle and things like that. Not to talk about the motorized, which is supposed to, the kind of vehicles that they're supposed to have, not just one, but backups and all the rest of them. So I think as a country, we need to understand that there is the issue about security. There is also the issue about contributing to the, the development of the country in terms of the people who are there. If you go to any custodial center now, it will shock you. The number of young people. Nobody, no country can survive the way we are doing with the number of young people in our custodial center. Remember, some of them are innocent.
Absolutely.
Some are minor offenders. So why are we doing this to ourselves?
It's a very good question. Lowest age for criminal responsibility in Nigeria is 7 years. How is that not an anomaly? Is that
I think it is, but also it is important to mention that there is a law. There's an amended. There's something that is an offering in terms of the law.
Okay.
The Boston Act that that is being brought to.
Do we know what that law says?
No. The part of the issue here is to also to look at the point about the treatment of young offenders, the issues about how to designate the issue of the age, and the proper specialization in terms of what needs to happen in terms of young offenders. Remember that we have the Child Rights Act.
Yes.
That some of the states have also designated. Part of this issue was issues about the argument in terms of who is a child. Even in terms of when some states did not want that because they wanted to have these children to be able to be married to them when they want it. So as a nation, we need to be able to look at what is necessary to align with international best practices.
Uju Agomoh, we have to leave it there. It's still surprising that we've not even been able to, it feels like we've not scratched the surface. But thank you very much for your time. Uju Agomoh is Executive Director, Prisoners Rehabilitation and Welfare Action Power.
Thank you.
I suspect we'll have you back sooner than later.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.